discussion. Okay, we had a discussion about
Yes.
a number of things. I don't know if it was recorded or not.
No, we are getting the hosts, the facilitators sorted back out, so we had not begun
Okay.
recording. Sorry.
Between Lila and myself and some others, we've had some very strong comments about preservation of forest and rural lands. So we will want to repeat those for the record, once the record is up.
Great. Yes, thank you. So yeah, let me give an overview of how this is going to work. We're probably going to shave a few minutes off of this because we've lost a little time. But so I'm Stephanie Dalkey. I'm with the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center, and we also have Mary from the county to help here. And I don't know if Dawn made her way back in.
I'm here.
There you are. Hi, Dawn.
Yep. Hi,
So
how are you?
we are going to just skip real quickly past some of the ongoing efforts in the county, and then we really want to jump into the discussion to hear from you all what your concerns are about maintaining tree canopy and what you think it would take to get you and your neighbors to also participate in programs and do things on your own to help maintain tree canopy. And if you have any concerns about this action and all of the related sub-actions under it. So with that, we've got kind of the steps of the blueprint showing now on the slide here. And I don't know if anyone had a chance to review the blueprints in detail before this meeting, but most of these have to do with kind of establishing a no net loss policy for the county. And that will mostly be affecting kind of future development. So a lot of that is about preserving the trees that we do have already. And so most of this is going to kind of affect developers or when there's significant kind of redevelopment projects. And then some of these steps get into kind of making sure that there aren't as many exceptions granted when developers want to remove perhaps bigger trees or more trees, and increasing penalties for violations and making sure that enforcement is strong, and also kind of increasing transparency and doing annual reporting on the state of tree cover in the county. And what we really want to talk about, especially with this group of all of you, is kind of how you think we should be prioritizing the increasing or protecting tree cover, and what kind of incentives and support do you all need to make these things happen. So I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, Mary. Yep, so we will be taking some notes here, and I think we've got about 15 to 20 minutes before they'll pop us back into the main session. And so with that, I do have some prompts and some questions to get things flowing. But also, you know, we're here to hear everything that you have to say. So feel free to use the chat. And this is being recorded, and we will have all of this material available after the session for everyone to review at a later date. Before I go any further, does anyone, Mary or Dawn, do you have anything to add?
I do not, but I did see that someone had their hand raised. Are you taking questions or comments now, or do you want, should people just chime in?
Yes, I think given the lack of time, we should just dive right into what people's concerns and questions are.
Sure. Are there any clarifying questions?
Yes, I have a clarifying question. Is the term no net tree loss? What does that really mean? If a developer, for example, chops down a mature stand and replaces it with a bunch of seedlings, is that considered no net loss? How is it defined?
That's a great question. And I don't know that it's gotten specific as to the age of stands, age of trees in the blueprint.
Because that's a key question, because, you know, replacing a mature forest with a bunch of seedlings is not those seedlings would have to grow for decades before they did the job that a mature forest does. And secondly, I would like to see this area included to go beyond just trees. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of pastures and fields, all of which have value in terms of their soils, future farming, drainage, flood prevention, et cetera, so that we shouldn't just be preserving forests, we should be preserving forests and rural lands from development, because that has caused a tremendous amount of problem and will continue to do so.
Right, great point. Trees aren't the only valuable plants out there. And a lot of wildlife also depend on having grasslands and open space that's not forest. I see there are a few other questions. Susan McCutcheon, you had your hand raised for a while.
Yes, what I was going to say is something that I brought up in the plenary was that, and there's probably someone on this group who's received the letter, but for example, transportation projects. I understand what Tom Denoga was saying. Yes, there is some loss in order to mitigate, and of course there's some loss and you can replant. However, the SC Maglev project, this is a general transportation projects, need to be thoroughly vetted about the damage they cause, and they will cause, or that they might cause. But one thing the Maglev project is doing, they're sending out letters to residents to say, gee, we're going to, cause something, because they're looking at the same area, with bark in this area and all. There's going to be a lot of green damage, but in general, but trees, etc. And the thing is, they are now saying to residents, gee, keep your trees, and then we also want to be able to plant trees there to make up for that loss. But you can't make up for that loss of, as someone else said, wildlife and other things. If you plow through and destroy a lot of land that's very, very integrated and it's a whole environment, you can't make up for it by planting some seedlings. I mean, there's some things where you can do that, certain things and mitigate in that way, but honestly, it's too much. I mean, it's too much to think that you can just cut up something else and then say it's okay. So we need to look very carefully at these major transportation projects that are really hitting Maryland. It's a big problem. Thank you.
Yeah, great point. Thanks, Susan. Okay, I see a couple other hands. Romy?
Yes, thank you so much. This is Romy. I am with the Family Tree Adoption Program in Riverdale. I saw in the slides that you presented that you mentioned a number of programs aimed at increasing tree canopy, but there was nothing there about supporting and increasing tree canopy through the private property owners. I think that is important. The county for 3 to 4 years now had been working with the Chesapeake Bay to support tree planting to prevent stormwater runoff across private properties. I think it's important to bring that out so that the county does not walk away from this important aspect of supporting private property owners, just leaning towards public tree planting programs.
Yes, that's a great point. And that's something that I do want to make sure we talk about in more detail is what step 7 under the blueprint actually does address incentives for county residents and local businesses to plant more trees on private property. And so we would love to learn from you what kind of support is needed to have more residents and businesses participate in those kinds of programs. So I'm going to come back to that for sure. Okay, I see a few other hands raised. And as we go forward, I want to make sure we don't run out of room on our notes slides. Okay, we'll take a couple more questions and then I want to kind of move to another prompt to make sure we've hit all the points of our discussion. Maureen Fine, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I have a comment, first of all. whatever happened to smart growth? And for example, at the Bureau of Engraving project at the Hartsville Agricultural Research Center, the county council, Prince George's County Council, is actually in favor of doing it. And my particular council member made a comment that he thought it was a good idea because it was unused land. So why at this day and age are we not having people on the council who are actually aware of what smart growth means? Like, you stay away from natural areas and you direct development to areas where there is already public transportation. And the other thing is, for example, people can protect their trees and their land. I used to volunteer with Maryland Environmental Trust, and they offer tax breaks to people who protect the land on their property. So I want to know why projects like the maglev are trying to get people to let them get credit for trees that are on private property so that they could go ahead and destroy trees elsewhere. That should not be allowed. We should not allow developers to use trees that could be protected in another way that's not going to trade off for development, or that could be considered as mitigation. And that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Okay, we've got a couple other questions here. Felix, do you have a question or comment?
Hi. Yes, good evening. Hi. Yeah. I'd like to pursue the comment of Mr. Romy and Council Member Tom Dernoga. I'm a public school teacher here, and I reside in front of the Dr. Henry Weiss High School and Barack Obama Elementary School. I have planted several trees in my backyard, and I am, going to plant some more, maybe 13, 15 trees more in my backyard. And so I'd like to find out really how can I avail myself of the incentives here. I would like to have also a rain barrel so that I could, water my plants, and not use the water supply here from the suburban water system. Okay. And I can, put my email here in the chat box.
Okay. Yeah, we can
If,
certainly get information to you, Felix.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll try to-
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll follow up with the details, but that's also another question for everyone is what kind of communication can the county improve on to make sure everyone is aware of how to access those incentive programs, especially when we're talking about, private property and that type of thing. So that's another thing we'd love suggestions and feedback on. I'm wondering if we should pop to the next slide, Mary. We want to talk about kind of that on that theme. And I know there's a couple other questions we'll get to, but I want to ask everyone, what are the tools and resources that you all need either to do what you need to do to help the county stay on the right path to maintain tree cover, or is it, do you need just more communication about the resources that are available to support tree planting or rain barrels, things like that? What do you need? And do you have any concerns also about more tree planting? Are you concerned about safety or maintenance issues with the trees? And do you need support on that side of it with helping make sure your trees remain healthy and safe? So I'd love your feedback on those things, and then I'll make sure we get to a couple other questions after that. So, okay.
So I can start because we have some experience doing this. So about 5 years ago, the organization that I work with the Global Health and Education Project started a program, a grant-funded program called the Family Tree Adoption Program. And that program was funded both by the county and the Chesapeake Bay Trust and other funders. So we did a pilot, and we saw that contrary to what we are all told, that minority communities, African-American communities, Hispanics, or immigrants are not interested in tree planting, they actually are. It's just that the information and the resources never got to them. And so that program, we've gone out to implement that program now for 5 years. So I think if you want to incentivize increase in tree canopy, it is important to work with organizations that are working with the people, that the people recognize where the leadership are actually from individuals from those communities. And then it's important for the county to continue to support such grant-funded programs using credible organizations that like the trust to administer grant programs, so that those programs are actually implemented by organizations on the ground. So that's one thing. In our experience, walking across all the parts of the county, planting 100 trees, we just finished planting 200 trees. We knew, or we got to understand that many people did never believed that the county can provide a resource like tree planting or post-planting maintenance. So I think that is an area that I think the county should continue to prioritize. There might be challenges, and I understand what my colleagues here said about balancing existing trees, but there is the inevitability that some of the trees are going to fail or are going to age out, and it is important to replace those trees as well.
Great, thank you, Rami. Amani, I know you had a comment as well.
Actually, I have two, and this is a repeat. Well, one of them is a repeat from the last meeting that you had. One has to do with the county itself. I know in our neighborhood, we have a nice tract of land. It's an urban forest, and the county is doing little or nothing about removing the vines and other invasive species that are choking off and killing the trees. So if, you know, we're not just talking about the commercial sector, but the county itself is guilty of this practice. I look at it every day and it makes me sick. The second thing I want to suggest to you is that I don't see anything yet. I see incentives, but I can tell you that especially a lot of my neighbors who are senior citizens, they cannot afford to call the tree service people to help them manage the trees so that they will grow and stay healthy. It's more than an incentive. You have to have money. So this plan needs to talk about some subsidies or something, grants, so that even your typical lower income homeowner, low middle income homeowner can have the resources to do the right thing. We want to, but we can't afford it. That's it.
Yep, great points, thank you. Okay, I see we've got a couple other hands raised. Derek Sutherland, would you like to?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I just want to thank you all for putting this together. Well, we're on the subject of trees, and I'll make my comments brief. I know time is limited. Currently, the Swan Creek Forest, located in southern Prince George's County, Maryland, on East Swan Creek Road and Fort Washington Road, is being decimated by a so-called Southern K through 8th school project, which is being put forth by our county executive, the Honorable Miss Angela Also Brooks. As we speak, the forest has been, mature trees have been cut down. Our Tantalon Citizens Association presidents met with Miss Also Brooks this past Monday at 3 p.m. in a good faith effort meeting, and she was going to discuss and did discuss with them promises made and, frankly speaking, promises have not been kept. We ask for a pause on this project because that proposed project is out of scale with this surrounding community, which is prone to flooding. I don't know if anyone is aware of it, but Channel 4 News as well as Channel 9 News has been out to the community, and community leaders have shared videos with those news organizations. So the existing problems of increased traffic, increased noise, and increased flooding will only be aggravated and exacerbated with further destruction of these mature trees in Swan Creek Forest, located here in beautiful Fort Washington, Maryland. So our community, frankly speaking, doesn't know what the next steps are. Frankly, our request and Ms. Alston-Brooks just is not listening to her constituents. I think that's the nicest way to say it in this forum. And it has caused us a great deal, and it's still causing us a great deal of worry and concern.
Okay, well, thank you, Derek. And
Thank you.
I think you make kind of a great point, is it's not just about what the county policies do for private development or how they support private landowners, but it's also county projects themselves need to also fit with their stated climate goals. So that's an excellent point you make. Okay, a couple other questions. And again, you know, if folks have suggestions about how we can kind of get past these barriers, you know, support people with subsidies, or if there's ways to tweak the existing incentive programs to make it easier for more people to access them. We'd love those suggestions either in the chat or you can raise your hand. So I think up next on my screen, I've got Mark Simon. Do you have a question or comment? Oh, you're muted.
There, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And my question is, how do we improve communication amongst all of these parties? And specifically to this issue of maintaining tree canopy, how do we get the Planning Commission, Department of Environment, our local officials, and the University of Maryland all in concert? And I have a very strong interest in a specific example. The university is about to destroy 28% of its extant tree canopy by dint of giving the land at pennies on the dollar to a developer. And the developer has unfortunately seduced the university by offering to build 300 graduate student housing slots for free. And we're about to lose a significant forest environment that is extraordinarily beautiful, important on many levels. And the irony is that in so doing, the university never, or the people in the university whose project this is, and it's basically a real estate deal, have never consulted your department or any of the other departments whose expertise is significant and important and could be brought to bear. Likewise, apropos the comment of the speaker who was just on, I share the concern that our so-called council representative does not actually represent her constituents and represents the developer in this instant case. And it's very disheartening to see that. So how do we bring together a degree of communication? I've, for instance, had Zoom meetings with the planning department vis-a-vis the Adelphi Road sector plan, which takes the Western Gateway project, which is the one I alluded to, which will destroy Guilford Woods, as a fait accompli. And it is astonishing to me the degree to which all of these important issues that you're speaking to have unfortunately been ignored. How do we bring these to public view? How do we make all of these disparate parties communicate?
Great, thank you, Mark. That's an excellent observation. And I think, you know, everyone's known for not being the best at talking with everyone else when they're going to do something, but we certainly see that happening at the county scale with all the different entities within the county. So how can we improve that? And I think having more and more of the public involved never hurts. But sometimes you can still feel a little bit disempowered. Okay, I think we've got a few minutes left. I know there's at least one other raised hand. Henry Francis, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for letting me talk. I'm also from the Tantalin and Swan Creek folks. I am out there with a picket sign every day, watching mature trees bulldozed to the ground, watching mother deer and their fawns look at the mud. And I want to know very simply, does your commission have the power to stop a destruction of the forest now, or 3 weeks from now, or will you ever? And right now in that situation, if you could stop it and do an evaluation, there's plenty of places for that school to be built, and every criteria that the commission is really excited about: stormwater runoff, preserving the canopy, preserving old trees, preserving the carbon sequestration. All of that can be done. But if the does not have power, can they advise a what do you call it? A court injunction? Tell me what you can do about this when the bulldozers will be there tomorrow morning, knocking down more trees.
Thank you, Henry. And I certainly can't comment on that, but I don't know, Dawn, if you can talk about the commission's function.
Yeah, as a member of the commission, I would say, no, we don't have the power to stop any actions tomorrow, but we are planting the seed to start discussions early, right? To start thinking about the type of land disturbance activities that are counter to the efforts to help our county become more climate resilient. So many times that pre-planning, that early dialogue helps shape efforts and projects to advance in a way that have less adverse impact.
So you're completely advisory in its status. It has no teeth.
We don't have enforcement authority. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, the Climate Action Commission is meant to kind of make sure the climate action plan is developed, but I don't know that it's going to be a standing commission beyond this point.
It doesn't have to be followed by the commissioners, basically.
Yeah.
I didn't quite hear the last comment.
Henry?
It doesn't necessarily have to be followed by any of the governmental power structure. They can use you for advice, but they don't have to follow it.
It is an advisory plan.
Yeah, the goal is for the council to adopt the plan once it's been through the public review and approval and all of that. But then I can't speak to the sort of follow-up enforcement of implementation piece. We just have about 3 minutes left. So really great comments and observations from everyone. I know there's a few more raised hands. Mary, do you want to go to the next slide just so you have more room?
Stephanie, I thought there was Councilmember Denoga. Did you have your hand raised or was it left over?
I had it raised. I'm wondering if I should let Mr. Smith and Ms. Thompson go. I think I'll do that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, Greg, if you're in between chewing, would you like to go?
You're on mute.
You're muted. We can come back to you.
Okay.
There we go. Do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I mean, this plan is clearly just a framework and it's advisory. The tough work is just the stream is going to get meaningful laws put in place, and all those laws are going to do is give us handles to sue the county when they ignore the laws, as they've been doing all along. If they weren't, we wouldn't be building in floodplains and cutting down forests the way they're seeing down in Tantalon. Here in Hyattsville, they're building luxury townhouses in the floodplain and ignoring an opportunity to expand an existing forest, as all the Anacostia restoration agreements and plans call for. And the district council and the planning board routinely ignore the laws and the policies. And then it falls on whether or not a community group has a wherewithal to sue the county again and again and again.
Okay, thanks, Craig. That's definitely an observation. So we just have a couple minutes left. Vera Thompson, you've had your hand up a while. Would you like to speak?
Yes, my question has probably already been answered, but from this conversation, what is going to take place, and will we be notified or invited back to discuss what's taking place and what the action is?
Yeah, certainly. Everyone who's been registered for this meeting will be notified of when the follow-up materials are available, like the recording and the notes and all of that. And there will also be opportunity for a public comment period. Council Member Jernoga, do you have an addition?
I think you just hit it. We're looking at, I think Ms. Hawkins is looking at possibly extending the timeline, but we were planning on a 30-day public comment period, which I think we're aiming for October, November. I'm forgetting which one it is. Yeah. There will be a 30-day public comment period.
Yep. Okay. So there's definitely more room. And also, I think we're still recruiting for a couple members on the Resident Expert Advisory Committee. So they've posted some links in the chat to the resident committee, or you could get in touch with any of us to find out more information if you'd like to participate in that over the next month or two.
Okay, so that's in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably been buried, but they'll repost the link. Okay, we've got about a minute left. Okay, I see. Yeah, thank you, Vera. Lila, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure it was entered into the record what we spoke about in the beginning, which is the first do no harm, and to halt the, to halt deforestation. And then the other thing is to really focus beyond trees in this, to establish green infrastructure and the need to preserve established green infrastructure.
Great, thank you, Lila.
And I saw Leslie raise her hand maybe in response to something I said, or to correct or clarify.
Okay. I can't see that. Okay. We've got just under a minute left. Denise Guitara, I see you've got a hand raised. You can quickly.
Yeah, for this question, I guess it would be in the next 3 or 5 years. I think if we can, a measure would be to see how much tree coverage we would get this time frame. And also to second some of the previous comments is to focus on the ecosystem services that trees can provide or forests provide, just beyond just the trees themselves. And also as part of outreach, kind of connecting these issues to things that people can actually relate to. So like urban heat island effects, and like how much heat reduction they can get by implementing